Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's time again for Baltimore Comic Con Live. We're in the Kids Love Comics room, and it's great to see everybody. John Such is here from the Word Podcast, and we're already seeing people line up for the discussion, which is fantastic. A great opportunity to talk about the wonderful books that are coming out of Magnetic Press, the imprint that is part of Oni and Lion Forge, and they're making some incredible books. I am going to introduce our panelists right now. We've got the Magnetic Press publisher, Mike Kennedy, veteran teacher, Mike Gianfrancesco from Teachers Lit X, one of the co-founders. We have Ronell Whitaker, another co-founder from Lit X, and Jana Troper, the speech language therapist. And we're going to be talking about a couple of the great Magnetic Press books. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks.
Good morning. Hello.
Good morning. Michael, I want to congratulate you and Magnetic Press for opening up the North American comics world to some of the incredible books that we're getting from all over the world. I mean, we all know, all of us as veteran comic book readers, how great a lot of the product is from around the world. And it's great that you guys are picking some of the best stuff.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much stuff out there that there's no way we could put it all out. So we just try to cherry pick the best we can.
That's excellent to hear, man. And again, we're gonna talk about a couple books in particular. We're gonna be talking about the series Irina, and then also we're gonna be talking about the Ballad of Yaya in particular. So, Jana, as a speech therapist and everything, how does reading comics help what you try to achieve with your teaching?
Well, I'm very lucky in that because I'm a speech language pathologist. I work on skill set. I don't deliver curriculum. I have a lot of flexibility in the resources I can use. So being able to use comics is obviously at its very basic level engaging for students. They like things that they're familiar. Certainly with the Marvel movies and that they've become even more recognizable, character-wise with a lot of my students. And then on top of that, for my students that are working on higher level thinking skills such as inferring, predicting, determining causes, being able to really piece together what's happening between the panels, what's going on in the gutter. It gives them a chance to practice that skill. And if they're a student that struggles with decoding, it kind of removes that barrier. That way they're not being penalized twice. We can really focus in on the thing that they need to learn the overall skill without having them do it on hard mode. So I've done everything from using the exact content, or if a student is working on the speech aspect rather than the language, the actual sounds, I just photocopy their favorite comic, highlight their sounds, and we role play it. So just using it as a familiar material and something that is highly engaging, and that often, they'll pick stuff at a higher reading level than they're comfortably fluent, and they're that much more motivated to rise to that occasion.
That's excellent. And I know, and I'm assuming, I want to see a show of hands. I learned how to read 50 years ago as a very small child by my father sitting down with the Sunday Funnies and the daily comic strips. And it absolutely helped my reading comprehension. Everybody did. We all learn how to read really pretty much from comics. Certainly. There we go. Yeah, man. I mean, truly. And it's so funny because, as you all know, as comic book fans, and how some people perceive comics as lowbrow and not a positive thing. I always out my brother-in-law as a guy who's like, I don't know how to break it to you, but my kid is more into sports than comics. And he was having reading difficulties. And I'm like, I don't know if you notice, but he's reading these things and it's helping him. And he took a step back and he's like, you're right. I'm sorry, man. And I'm like, it's cool. You've just given me a story that I will share with my comic friend audience and parents that are really, starting to get their kids reading. And we all know early development is so important. So, yeah, guys, honestly, like Michael, tell me as an academic and stuff, how useful comics are in this capacity.
Well, I mean, we've had this conversation for so long. I'm almost hesitant to
Are
do
you
it
bored by
again,
it?
but
I apologize if
no, I'm not bored. It's just like I think we've gone. Honestly, I think we've gone past the need to justify the use of these texts at this point. Um, because the work that I know, I've been doing this for 15 years, and Ronell, he's been doing it for probably the same length of time that I have. Jana, her whole career as well. There are teachers all over the country, all over the world, that have been praising the pedagogical usefulness of these texts. Um, so, I mean, I would think that by now, I know there's still some people that are naysayers. I know there's still people that push back, but I think that number has gotten much smaller, at least in my observations over the years. But certainly, I mean, it's just simple scaffolding, like Jana was talking about. We learned to read, yes, through some of us through comics, but also picture books, which are, you know, those first few books you get as a child have very few words and a lot more images. And somehow over the years, the images slowly vanish, the words become more prevalent, and that becomes, you know, became the canonical kind of way that we look at reading. But now with the complexity of comics and the creators that have grown up like us in that world, we can make equal arguments that there are canonical texts within the comic world that are complex, that we would not hand to reluctant learners, that we would not put in the hands of even people that are good readers that just aren't they aren't familiar with comics as we are. You know, there are plenty of academics like myself and educators like myself who've never read a comic before and get confused if you hand one to them. So yeah, I think at this point we've said enough about this. I think the time is now that we are trying to help those that are already convinced and giving them the strategies and the texts that are appropriate for their students in their classrooms.
And right now, before we get to Mike and these specific examples from Magnetic Press, which I do think, you know, achieve that. Anything you want to build on what Michael just said?
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I've been on a lot of these panels with Michael, so I get the reluctance to relitigate it, right? But then I also try to remember that reading is a thing that we take for granted, especially as people who love to read, right? And there are certain things that people who love to read just have naturally. So, like, for example, one of those things that we just have for ourselves is this ability to kind of be immersed in what we're reading, right? As I was reading The Battle of Yaya, and I was reading, the Irina, and any good comic, the thing that it has in common is that immersion quality, right? Because when I think about my reluctant readers, those are the folks who maybe haven't had the opportunity to like really crack the code for what it means to actually enjoy reading. And when you give them that opportunity to say like, "Oh, I'm in this book. Is this what y'all are always experiencing?" Like, yes, this is what happens when I read a book. So like when that gets that, it's like open that door. And then also when I was reading Irina in particular, it's that nuance that's there, right? So for my kids who are those advanced readers, those ones who like the opportunity to kind of decode or to find a hidden meaning, they're going to be looking at that like it's a treasure hunt, right? So now you have this opportunity where you're giving that kid an extra layer to explore, and that's that other thing that you open up for them. Well, that kid now figures out that literature has more to it than just what's face value or than what's on the page. So I think, you know, even beyond arguing like the skills and the usefulness of it, it's just reminding people, you know, this thing that you do naturally as a person who likes to read, other folks don't have that. And this thing that you no longer have, the people who like aren't lifelong readers, are taking for granted the idea that there's more that can be found in a text. And I think comics help people with that too.
Understood.
I agree. I think I agree 100% with Ronell in terms of it being an enrichment. It's not a replacement for text. It doesn't dismiss the text. The art elevates it. The art complements it, and it goes deeper, like he was saying with those advanced students. One of my texts that I love using is The Arrival by Sean Tan, and that has not a single word in it. It is important sequential art, and you can talk about metaphor and all these different symbolism themes, and you don't have to justify it. But somehow when we put text and words on the same page, it becomes a little kid thing. And like everyone's saying, I think we're past that.
Understood. Mike, I want to ask specifically about Irene. If I'm saying it wrong, is it Irina or is Irina?
I think arena is fine. Yeah, I mean as a Polish woman, Polish names, I'm sure that it's pronounced differently in different regions. So.
Understood. It's really, man. This is interesting because with Irina, and I know you're on volume 3 right now, I believe, and I appreciate you giving me volume 1 to read. There's a kinship between this and a book like from years ago, but it's certainly a classic, both in comic circles and also academic circles now, and that's Mouse, the Art Spiegelman book. And I think it's great. And it was funny. And we talk about picture books, Michael. I was talking to Brad Meltzer last week, and one of his latest books is I Am Anne Frank. And I really am impressed that at this young age, these books are coming out that can sensibly, and I think in a way that children can understand, the incredible tough times of that occupation period of World War II, and put it in terms that a small child can understand the lessons that need to be learned. And again, it was funny. I asked Brad last week ago. I'm like, is this kind of a little tough for this age? And he said no. And I understand. And truly, I mean, that's really for everybody. I want to start with Mike though. Just bringing this kind of comic to an English speaking readership, and what was the decisions that maybe went behind doing this with Irina.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw it at Angoulême 2 years ago, I think, and at that point, I think only the first volume had come out over there. I was just blown away, just because, like you said, it's an important topic, it's an important subject matter, and it's one that kids, should start to become familiar with. But it's also such a dark and harrowing time. How do you tell that story to kids? Yes. And I think JD and Severin and David, the artist, they just did a fantastic job. Even though everything is really cartoony, it does not shy away from the real drama that went on. And I think, they walked a very tight line, and I think they pulled it off phenomenally. So we do have, sometimes we do face some internal questions about, like, oh man, is that panel going to be too harrowing for kids? But this book has been incredibly successful and popular throughout Europe. They've had installations at museums in Warsaw and throughout Europe. They had a concert with Irina being projected on the backdrop during. It's been a really successful series over there, because they took the risk of telling this kind of story in this kind of style, and it's paid off. It's paid off in the sense that people are appreciating it, and people are getting into it.
I understand. I'm showing obviously these images from the book, and it's great to hear that they did a concert. Spiegelman a couple years ago was doing that with several silent graphic novels, and assembled a small orchestra on stage to present this. And these weren't children's stories. It's a great idea for children's stories. And again, I think the basic art style that we're getting in the book as well is really showing how a warm way to talk about this very difficult subject. So I'm very impressed. And again, I applaud Magnetic and really Lion Forge in general for really combing through the international market and finding books like that. So the rest of the panel, let's talk about Irina for a moment. Give me your observations, as well as how helpful this book can be.
I do want to say, sometimes as adults we do children a disservice by trying to protect or shield them, and we also do them a disservice by underestimating their ability to interact with complex themes and ideas. If you look at, just in general, the art that as kids that we're exposed to when we were younger, we had to watch Bambi's mom die. Like, that's it's the thing that you have to have kids grapple with, because the thing is, you have to remember that those kids are going to grow up to be adults. So if you shield them from some of these, the realities that they're going to have to face. I think that you're doing a disservice. Looking at Irina, it reminded me of other books I've used in my class, like B.B. Wolf and the Three LPs, or even, I forget, Michael, what your favorite one is? Oh, Pride of Baghdad. Like, you find a way to get a kid to enter into this tough subject, right? And, the art style, the way that the people are drawn, it's very cartoony and very approachable. But what strikes you, like the first couple pages, like that big splash page when Irina is entering into the ghetto, and it's like those little small pockets of all like the atrocities and the realities of what's happening, and it's not shying away from the brutality of what's happening. It's like this simplistic way of the characterization is our entree as a kid to get into it, right? But I don't want to hide from you what's actually happening around, which I think is why the artist chose to make the the backgrounds and everything else kind of photorealistic. Like this is a real story that you need to grapple with, and I'm going to give you these avatars to live through it. But at the end of the day, this is a thing that happened, and as your learning journey is happening using this comic, you need to kind of confront it, and I think that was probably the most masterful thing for me, was seeing that. There's also some really cool hidden things happening. Like, you just scroll past that Jeep scene with the image in that truck window there. If you look at that, we get a call back to that later. And as like an experienced reader, or even as like an older reader, like my high school kids would flip over that when they saw that scene of like those ghostly images come back.
Yeah.
So again, seeing the depth with what a artist can do with a story that, I love traditional text, but words sometimes can't capture what art can do, and that was just a great example of that.
Yeah, no question, absolutely, and you're right. The composition, even though it is in a cartoony style, it does have there's very much concern about making sure that the background is telling a story as well as the close-ups as well. Any other observations from the rest of you?
I really was drawn to the choice to have a dog included throughout. Like, I'm a dog person, so I automatically noticed, but I thought having that as well as a child and then adults, and seeing how these things affected and how different characters valued each of them in a way that may be different from how it's almost certainly different from how we do it now when we're outside of these extraordinary circumstances, and being able to discuss in depth why this character decided to be violent in this situation against that one, but not against that dog, and why somebody else would be or wouldn't be. And I mean, you could take any topic, you could make this a social emotional lesson, you could make it a history lesson, it could be in literature class. I mean, it's a medium rather than a topic or a genre. And I think that if we can get a really snappy tagline, something that sums up those thoughts, I think we really can elevate to that next step of, I don't have to convince you to use it. Let's talk about how we're going to use it.
Yeah. Well, and if I could just jump in for a second, I think one of the things about comic books in America is so many people just think, oh, they're good versus evil stories. It's, it's you're either pure evil or you're the hero. And I think a story like Irina showed that, I mean, yes, there are a couple of the Nazis that are just pure evil. But it also showed that there were a lot of people in a lot of different situations. There were soldiers who were kind of forced to fight in the Nazi army and they didn't want to, and they end up helping Irina, on the sly. And some of them have to, they pay a price for that. Like you mentioned, the one soldier, the evil Nazi wants to kill the dog, and the other soldier's like, hey, come on, that's the general's favorite dog, which was a lie, but it was just to protect the dog. Because I think that sometimes in comic books, especially if you're coming from it not as a comic book reader or who's familiar with the storytelling mechanics of sequential art, you just assume, oh, it's good versus evil, and so it's you're going to fit in one of those two categories. But that's not the case. I mean, like all good stories, there's two sides to every character and every scenario, and the best stories can make the reader aware of both sides. I mean, even if, clearly the right moral choice is the one side, at least you can kind of see like, well, why did they think that way? Why did they feel that way? Or, why were they forced to do those things? Or why did they choose to do those things? And I think those are some of those subtle lessons that that you mentioned that comics can bring about.
Libraries are a very important part of kid comics and stuff, as are schools, obviously. And in this COVID time, I don't know, strategy wise, both Mike and the rest of you, how you're able to connect with libraries, and then how libraries are connecting with kids during this very weird time. I mean, and thank God we are in the electronic age where they can expand what they do beyond the physical building. But any thoughts on that right now?
Well, I mean, it has been tougher for us to get books into libraries these days, just because a lot of libraries are still closed down, or even if they are reopening slowly, they're not purchasing as much new stuff. So, like you mentioned, the third Arena book did come out just this month. In fact, it is a trilogy, so there's only 3 in the series.
Okay.
But the second volume came out last month, so we tried to get them back to back really quickly, but we are having trouble getting them into libraries just because even when they're open, like I said, they're still their purchasing budgets might be reduced.
Sure.
So yeah, we're doing whatever we can on just the kind of the grassroots newsletter and email path. Trying to make digital versions available and whatnot. Our books are available on Comixology and Kindle. We're looking into, I know that there are a couple of other platforms that kind of specialize in library digital.
I was going to ask about Hoopla in particular, because as a Chicagoan, I certainly take full advantage of Hoopla. And it really is a terrific platform for people on a shoestring budget, not just for kids comics, but comics of all kinds. So,
yeah, we haven't gotten a Hoopla account set up yet, but we did start that conversation ironically right before the whole COVID.
Wow.
We started talking to them in January. We do need to get that going soon. We've just been so busy. It's funny with everything shutting down or slowing down or limiting their access. You'd think, oh, well, that just gives us more mind share to do stuff. It's ironically been exactly the opposite. We've had to work twice as hard to kind of make up for that deficit. And so our mind share has been a little bit spread out lately, but that is on our high priority list.
Understood. Yeah, the rest of you, honestly, I mean, again, I think Hoopla is great. And I don't know the other platforms that libraries use, but can you talk about whatever you guys use in terms of interacting with the libraries to kind of achieve what you guys do?
Yeah, Hoopla is probably the closest thing I can get kids to. I'm an administrator right now, actually, so I'm no longer in the classroom, so I can kind of speak to a specific thing about this that I think is something that people need to kind of really consider. So I'm in a district that serves a south suburb of the city, and a lot of my kids do have access to a public library. And it has an account with like Hoopla, but some of my kids don't. They don't have access to a digital library, so they depend on us as a school to try to provide what we can for them. And one thing I can say that was on my radar, but has been brought into sharp focus recently, is how difficult it is to get classroom sets and things like that digitally in graphic novels. We use certain services, but as a person who has purchasing power, it is shocking to me that there are so many publishers that it feels like they don't want our money. It's like, I got so much money to spend, man. Like, I want to throw money at people. And it's like, keep your thousands of dollars, right? It's kind of one of those things where I feel like there needs to be a lot more concentrated effort to do this work. I know that there are places like Solution Squad was mentioning, Comics Plus, but again, there's always the caveat of trying to find something that will work for more people, and I've struggled in my position to kind of find a way to consolidate that. So that's been it. But I mean, as far as we send kids to the library all the time, because like those are like our book drug dealers. Like I can't give you this book But there's a person around the corner who can like give you this really cool book that you might want to dive into.
I agree, man, and I love talking to the comic book people I know that work in libraries, and just that exact goal of, hey, man, seriously, you're gonna love this, or woman. You'll forgive me. I have 70s slang. That's what happens when you grow up in the 70s. But truly, like, there's great things here, and really fun things, and it's really just reminding children. And forgive me, I know this is like an old record, but the fun of reading, and really, and it's comics really help in that capacity. And Michael, forgive me, I didn't want if you had a comment on what we're just talking about in terms of working with the libraries.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add to what Ronell said. I think he's spot on. Obviously, I spent a lot of my time this summer when we were concerned about what our return was going to look like in the fall, and I teach a graphic novel course.
Oh, great!
Which it is, and my district and my building and my department chair and principal have been very generous and supportive, and we have purchased a number of class sets of books, hard copy books, but that is not as easy to disseminate now. My district in my state is on a hybrid. Well, we're full back, but a lot of schools are on hybrid, and all districts have the option. Parents have the option to put their kids on virtual. So we've seen a number of students on virtual. So I don't know the numbers or percentages, but so I have to teach to a group of kids in front of me and kids at home. And I can't, it's not as easy to disseminate hard copy books. There's also a quarantine process for the books as well. Because, passing that chain of command, or that, tracking the who touched it when and all that. So I reached out, I've been trying to reach out to publishers, particularly those that I've already purchased class sets from, to see if they would go, for the time being, until things stabilize and we're able to bring kids back into the buildings 100%, and we're able to distribute books the way we used to, allow me to utilize some form of digital versions for the books, at the very least of the books that I've already purchased. We've already purchased as a department. That had mixed success. And, Ronald, I'm glad you have a lot of money. My district doesn't. We don't have, a lot of money to spend on digital versions, so it's not as easy to find these texts. And I've been making do where I can with online comics, and those publishers that have come back to me and given me the opportunity to utilize digital versions. But yeah, that my school library. To get back to the topic, I've worked very closely over the past few years with my school librarian to help curate a nice collection of books in her. In media center, graphic novels that students can take out. And I myself have a large graphic novel library, which currently is packed up, but hopefully we'll be back on the shelves soon. So, that's, other than what Ronell said, I guess that's what I would like to add.
Well, I wanted to build on what you just mentioned in terms of having a reading list, even for physical books. I'm curious to hear what graphic novels is on your reading list, and obviously, Mike, we're also here to talk about what's happening with Magnetic, but I would like to hear about the other books and publishers that you're suggesting to your students.
Well, from my, you mean Mike Kennedy or Mike me?
Mike, you're the one who brought up this.
Sure, yeah. I have class sets of American-Born Chinese, Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, Gene Yang, American-Born Chinese. Yep. Smile by Raina Tegelmeyer. Let's see. Let me think. Oh, Ms. Marvel Volume 1, No Normal. G. Willow Wilson. Let's see. Trying to think of which books AD New Orleans After the Deluge, Josh Neufeld, and as Ronell mentioned, Pride of Baghdad, Brian K. Vaughan. Cool. I Kill Giants, Joe Kelly.
Sure.
It's actually a Lion Forge book, and it's Upgrade Soul. Is another one that I used towards the end. Mouse, of course. I've had a class set of Mouse since before I taught. Batman Year One is another one. And I have half a class set of Persepolis.
Oh, that's great.
I'm sure. Oh, and I have Romeo and Juliet, the manga classics edition.
Oh,
of
very
Romeo
nice.
and Juliet.
That's a great way to teach Romeo and Juliet.
So-
So it sounds like a wide range of grades that you're dealing with too. What's your age range?
Well, I teach the class is actually all seniors, juniors, and
Okay.
seniors. But it's not when I introduce some of these texts that are maybe middle grade level. It's
Mhm.
about scaffolding, like I said earlier, that people who've never read these books, and a lot of my students get into the class excited about it, but they've read very few comics. So we build to something like Mouse or Upgrade Soul, which are very complex and dense graphic novels that require that level of attention and understanding and analysis to be able to pick up things like Ronell showed that those kids, the ghostly kids in the windshield, a lot of people wouldn't see that on a first read, especially people who are new to the medium. So, and I find that the elementary schools in my district often borrow some of my books. I send them, the sets to
Cool.
borrow to use with their kids too. So I'm trying to help service other parts of my district as well.
That's excellent. And you're based in Rhode Island.
Mhm.
Everybody else right now is in Chicago. And Mike, I want to go back and also talk about another magnetic book that I wanted to discuss, and that's the Ballad of Yaya. Now, Irina is life in a Polish ghetto during World War II. Tell us about Ballad of Yaya.
The Ballad of Yaya is a 9-book series. The last 3 will be coming out in December. And it's the story of a little girl who she's a rich girl. She's a daughter of a diamond merchant in Shanghai, China in 1937. And when the Japanese attack, they are separated. And she finds herself on the run with a little street urchin boy named Tudo. He's world wise, and he's out there to. I mean, he's an orphan, so he doesn't really have a family. So he kind of takes her in, and the two of them go off on this journey to try to catch up with her parents, who she believes have gotten on a ship to Hong Kong. So
Wow.
it's a long journey ahead of them, and it's just full of all of these little sub adventures along the way. But it is telling one story of her finding her parents and her friendship with this kid from the other side of the street, and learning how to, appreciate people for who they are and not where they come from.
That's awesome. And it's interesting that in both cases, you're dealing with this very tough period. I mean, what was happening between China and Japan during the war was a very different experience than the ghettos of Eastern Europe and what they had to deal with Nazi Germany. It's man, honestly, and it really does blow my mind out in terms of some of this hard hitting stuff that, again, I think is being made palatable for this younger audience to understand these very complex things.
Yeah. And then like Irina, there are some moments in Yaya where it's just like the horrors of war, just in general, but that specific war as well, are very carefully and very responsibly portrayed without pulling any punches.
No, I seriously, congratulations. So how many critical eyes, Mike, are at Magnetic in terms of looking over this, again, vast international world of comics? I mean, God, even the titles that Michael were really expressing and stuff. I know they're not Magnetic and stuff, but that's the thing. There really is this just beautiful. I mean, and especially as an older reader, we all kind of, and maybe likely started with Richie Rich and Archie and some of the other, titles and everything. And then we had our superhero period. I know as an older reader and stuff, and this really did happen a couple I'm in my 50s, and a couple decades ago, it was like, I still like superhero stories, but it's great to read other things in the comic format and stuff. So tell me about really exploring these other genres and these other great stories.
Well, that's the thing with Magnetic is, I mean, the vast majority of our titles are acquisitions from overseas, not just France. A large proportion of them tend to be French, but we also bring a lot of books from Italy. We've got a number of books from Chinese authors and artists. But yeah, I mean, at this point, so just to clarify, Magnetic is now separate from Line Forge. We're both owned by Polarity, which is the same parent company.
Excuse me.
Magnetic, yeah. So Magnetic is independently run, and right now, I mean, for the most part, it's kind of a 2.5 person operation. So the majority of the I guess curation, if you want to call it that, it is me. I mean, I just I've found so many great publishers out there who already, I mean, they're the ones with the great eye because they're pulling in the great stories and authors and artists. I'm just standing behind them, looking over their shoulder, and I'll take that one. But that's the thing about in Europe is, superheroes just don't work over there. They've tried it so many times and it doesn't, but yet there are so many. I mean, the graphic novel industry over there is really just incredible, so much stronger than the United States. They will sell dozens of thousands of copies at average of a $20 hardcover in just France, a country the size of Texas, whereas we might struggle to sell a few thousand copies across the entire country. So I mean, over there they appreciate the medium to such a degree that they apply it to every kind of story you can imagine. I mean, and they have readers of every age, and they have books for every type of reader at every age group. So for us to be able to find books like this, it really is, it's the joy of discovery. It's like I go over to Angoulême and it's like the best flea market ever because I can just find the coolest stuff in the smallest booths. And then it's just a matter of having to just sort through them and prioritize them because, we put out about between 30 and 36 books a year. So it's about 2 to 3 books a month. And that's a pretty heavy load for a company our size. We're putting all kinds of strategies together to try to grow. And once we do, then we can start adding to that number. But at this point, it really is it's filtering that cream and bringing over what we can.
Absolutely. To the rest of you, I'm curious, and I'll start with Jaina. I'll say again, as an older reader, I appreciate manga, but to get my brain to read comics, left to right, and then with manga go right to left, it is really a brain twister for me that continues to challenge me when I try to read manga. I know kids obviously are more adaptable, but is that an issue in terms of when you're starting to teach them about how to read comics and stuff?
For my students, no. It just in my experience. I'm not saying, for the grade. I do work with a little bit younger students than our other educators in here, but and some of them certainly are interested in manga, but for the most part, because they're at school and they have that I do reading this way mentality, I do it left to right, I do that. That hasn't been something I've run into, although I've had a handful of manga titles that kids have picked for, whatever activity when we have the flexibility to do that. But that in particular has not.
Michael and Ronell, I mean, any thoughts in terms of, again, maybe this is just an old man thing on my part. My VCR is still blinking 12, so you can appreciate my own challenges. But yeah.
The fact that you still have a VCR says a lot. You know what? Manga, I think, and first of all, there are kids who come to me who have never read a comic. So I don't take it for granted that kids can read them. So I do try to make sure everybody's on the same baseline with access. But what I found with manga in particular is if you are a kid who is a fan of anime or a manga, you'll overcome anything. And that's really just an example of the whole interest level thing, right? So if a kid is interested in something, they will put the work in to learn how to do it. I have kids who taught themselves Japanese so that they can read the books in the native language. It's not just one kid. There have been multiple kids who do that. That's amazing. So it's one of those things where comics are the best example of once you find something that a kid is into, then they will apply themselves.
That's amazing. And Michael, any anecdotes you want to share in regards to any of that?
I mean, like I said, I do one manga book with my students, and it's a Romeo and Juliet adaptation. Some of them do have to be, you have to explain, because I spent the whole year up to that point explaining how to read comics from left to right, and then I have to say, well, okay,
Yeah.
except for these kinds of comics, which are the complete opposite of that. But they, kids are flexible and they are adaptable, and it takes them far less time, I think, to get into the groove of that type of reading than it would, someone much older and more set in their ways. I mean, their brains are still developing, so it's not as difficult. It's like learning two languages when you're 3, 4, 5 years old.
Yeah.
Your brain is a sponge at that point, and new things aren't as frightening when you're younger.
Yeah.
So I can't say I've had too much trouble. That book though, Yaya, did invoke in me memories of being younger, and I'm not a huge manga aficionado, but reading things like Barefoot Gen, and I saw it, that almost immediately brought and then anime versions of those stories, as well as like Grave of the Fireflies, which is where I often found myself landing in books and anime and manga like this. So just going all the way back to Ronald's point about those difficult conversations we have with our students, and I'm also a father, and my son is 9 years old, and he's starting to ask questions about things like this, about the horrors of the real world, and the fantasy is dropping away, unfortunately, much sooner in the world we live in now than I can remember for myself. So having these types of texts that are accessible in terms of the artworks, the style, and the presentation of the story, which still force parents, teachers, students, kids to look more seriously at things that are just unfortunately the reality. And I'm like wondering when we're going to see the drop of dozens, if not more, of pop culture movies and books and graphic novels and comic series about the pandemic. I'm sure that's all being worked on right now, which all of us have lived through, including the kids. So
Understood.
Here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Well, thankfully, I'm sorry, Michael. Mike, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, you bring up a good point that is applicable not just to graphic novels, I think, but it's there, though. The idea that, like, when we're trying to shield kids from things, like, it's like we're going to put it in front of you and then you've experienced it. But there's this removal of ourselves as people that are interacting with kids in that world, right? So if I'm giving this kid a book to read, I'm not removing myself from that conversation. I should be a part of that conversation as a teacher. And I know from talking to you, Michael, just as a parent, like, you're with your child in that discovery. And I think that may be part of the disconnect, is that we're so used to saying that we can't let a kid experience this thing as if they're going to experience it by themselves. And we have to remind ourselves that we'll be there with them to help them navigate it.
Yeah.
Understood. I apologize, guys. We have to wrap up. But honestly, I thank you for a great conversation. Mike, do you want to direct people to Magnetic Press really fast as far as the URL where they can find this catalog of books?
Yeah, I mean, you can find out all about all of our books at magnetic-press.com. And we've got a big middle grade library. We've got a bunch of children's books as well as YA and above. But yeah.
Sounds great. Honestly, everybody, great conversation. Truly appreciate it. I thank you for your time, and thank you for the work that you guys do. It's really important to teach the next generation these tough lessons, and also the world that can come from reading. So thank you very much. It was great talking to you all. More great Kids Love Comics programming coming up right at the top of the hour. Thanks very much for watching, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
All right. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. I am Mark Mariano, and coming up in a few minutes, we'll be having John Patrick Green on, the author and writer and artist of the awesome Investigator series. We have an awesome lineup for you today, so hang around all day. We have just a ton of fun scheduled. Let me throw up this graphic one more time. Get your supplies ready, because we want you creating art with us. We want you sending us your comments, your jokes, whatever you want to send us as we continue this fun programming here at the Baltimore Comic-Con. So we want you to get your colored paper, glue, scissors, crayons, markers, and pencils. I got mine over here, stolen from my son. So look at all these crayons. Have you ever had this many choices? I know at comic conventions, I do a lot of commissions, and when I have this amount, it's very tough for me to find the right color. So sometimes the traditional 8 crayons might be your best bet. Also, later on today, make sure you get some paper bags. If you have some paper lunch bags, grab those, have those at the ready. Parents and kids, we want everyone joining in. We're going to be making paper bag puppets later today as well. So yes, let's get right to it. So my first guest that I'm going to have on, he is the writer and artist of the Awesome Investigators series. And just to kick things off, we're gonna show one of the trailers. Right. Here we go. Dude, that's awesome. Fantastic. Oh, I'm loving it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. John Patrick Green. Welcome.
Hello. Hello.
How are you, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. Very good. So that trailer was just super fun, super quick, and just full of laughs and excitement. So tell us a little bit about the Investigators, John.
Yeah, so Investigators, it's a graphic novel. It's a chapter book graphic novel about 2 alligators who wear vests and they solve crimes. So they're investigators. Their names are Mango and Brash, and their vests are actual VESTs. So which stands for Very Exciting Spy Technology. And so the vests have all sorts of gadgets and stuff that will help them solve mysteries and stuff.
That's fantastic. Very cool. Very cool. And now, so you have 2 books are out currently, right?
Yes.
And the third one's about to drop?
Well, the second one just came out.
That's right. Okay.
Just at the end of not even a month ago. And the third one comes out in February. So,
wow.
And then there's a 4th one, and I'm currently drawing the 5th one. So.
Excellent. Excellent. Wow. Fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, we do have John Patrick Green here, and you can please, if you have any questions for him about the series, about the characters, shoot us some comments. We'd love to get your comments up here, and so you can ask John the question and he'll answer it for you. In the meantime, I'm going to ask my own. One thing I always love asking, you probably get it a lot. Okay. Where did the idea come from?
Where did the idea come from?
Yes.
So essentially, it's hard to say where it came from as much as why it came.
Okay.
So I had previously done a book called Hippopotamister and 2 books called Kitten Construction Company, and those were early reader graphic novels. So they were closer to between picture books and chapter books. Right. And when I had finished the second one of Kitten Construction Company, I had to come up with something new for my publisher. What was my next book going to be? And I wanted to sell them something really quick because at the time my editor was going to go on maternity leave. And I was like, I want to sign him a book before she's gone for 6 months. And she had asked if I had any ideas for a chapter book. And she was like, you should do a chapter book series. Come up with something in 3 days, basically. And so I kind of spent this feverish weekend of just writing down every single idea, good or bad, that I had. And it was like a list of like 22 ideas that were just, it was just single line descriptions, you know, and there would be like Dr. Copter. He's a doctor that can turn into a helicopter. And then investigators, they're alligators that investigate crimes, you know, and like there'd be a whole entire page of those ideas. And I sent those to her. And
so these are just ideas at this point. These aren't
they were just ideas.
Or anything, just ideas.
It was really just 1 or 2 sentences describing each idea, and they were mostly unrelated. So it was just random ideas I had. I'm sure I have the list somewhere with some of the things that haven't gotten used.
Sure.
But basically, you know, she took a day or so to look at them, and then she just said, you know, investigators sounds like it has the most potential. And I was like, okay, give me your top 5. And then she listed things like Dr. Copter or Who Dino, who was just pitched as a dinosaur who's like Houdini. And so I just took all the other ideas that she likes, and I made them the supporting cast.
Fantastic.
So once that idea, you know, which is like, you know, it's an old joke, investigators, alligators invest. It's, you know, it's like a schoolyard joke that, you know, I didn't necessarily come up with, but I figured this is an opportunity to put my own spin on it. Right?
Excellent.
So that's basically how it came about.
And I take this as a, you know, even as a good, for teachers or students that are watching now, I mean, this would be a cool idea to do, is just like John did. He just listed a bunch of ideas, even no matter how silly they might have been, and then it can grow into something more. So even though you did list, so how many total you think you gave her? Like
it was 22.
So even though
different ideas.
Right. So even though it's like a list of 22 different ideas, in the end, you ended up using not only investigators, but you also came up with a supporting cast that helped build that world. So
exactly. Yeah. There was nothing planned in advance of sort of like even just writing the first story. It was basically just, I had those ingredients.
Okay.
Right? You know, the things that the editor thought were funny. And I said, okay, now I have to put them all into a pot and stir it up and see what comes out.
Exactly.
And that's like an activity that you can do either by yourself or you can do with friends, where like you can take a bunch of your friends and you all write down 2 or 3 ideas. And then you say, okay, now we have to put them all in a story and see what comes out.
Yeah, we do similar things like that at the Baltimore Comic-Con, when we have a bunch of people just give us ideas and we sort of put it all on one drawing board, and a lot of times it'll mix together in one big picture. And yeah, so that's always fun. And now with these books, are they each book is self-contained, or is there an overlying arc that also connects the books together?
Well, there's recurring themes, and they're definitely they're supposed to be standalone. You can start anyone from the beginning,
right?
But there's definitely callbacks, and so you'll miss some information, but it's just like deeper understanding of some of the jokes of the world or the characters if you read them all in sequence. But each so each kind of like ends in a bit of a cliffhanger, sometimes a little bit, but really it's not. It's the full story is resolved in each book. Right. It's just sort of a setup for.
We gotta want our readers wanting more, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
We have a comment from J. Robert Deans. He says, "Is there a chance that a Dr. Copter spinoff could take off?"
Well, I mean, he does spin off quite a lot. That's really not up to me. I think the extent to his adventures that we'll see will probably be contained within the pages of investigators. His longest sequence is his origin story in the first book. Excellent. A flashback, which is basically a callback to an homage to An American Werewolf in London.
Gotcha. Very cool. And the thing about creating these books is then a lot of times with the characters and the world it is, they almost start telling their own stories, and you almost start growing the universe just very organically, right? Like you can see like the universe that you're creating, you can like, oh, well, this guy might work well against someone else, and that'll help you grow someone else as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. The first book, I had all these characters, and I had kind of a loose plot, but I didn't really define who any of them they were until the story was kind of completed. And so with each time I start a new book, I'm using that as a foundation, and I'm building on top of it to kind of discover who these characters are as they go along. I didn't really start, so for the first book was a little bit improvised. Right. I kind of made it up as I went. And with each book, it kind of becomes less and less of that, because you have so much stuff that you have to sort of stick to, right? You can't, you've established things, so you can't really contradict them anymore. So you have to sort of be aware of what you've done to proceed and make characters consistent. Yeah, absolutely.
And now when you go about the investigators and the vests that they wear, they all have a bunch of different gadgets that help them out, right?
Yes.
And recently, you and your publisher, you guys ran a contest.
We had a.
Before we start discussing, let's get some gadget ideas. If we have any gadget ideas you want to list in the comments about what gadgets would help the investigators save the day. And then go ahead, John, tell us about the contest that you had.
So the contest, it was an invent a vest contest, and vest, since it stands for very exciting spy technology, it doesn't just have to be like what type of vest they wear. It can be what kind of like gadgets that vest might have, or anything that would relate to them being able to solve a crime. So the contest was for kids to either draw or just describe a cool gadget or vest, equipment that Mango and Brash could use in a future investigation. And the prize is that we draw a page featuring their invention. Mm-hmm. And it's going to appear. The winner was announced, and I think I tweeted out the page. It'll be in the third book is where it will actually appear, where the Gators try out the invention.
That is awesome. So the actual invention appears in the book. So that's great.
It'll actually appear in the book. And get mentioned. And now it's part of the canon. It's part of the continuity.
I love that.
So oddly enough, like with there was a part in book 5, like this invention that this kid came up with was so cool. It was a cool little thing. So in book 5, there was just naturally a part in the story where I'm like, oh wait, if they had this invention with them, they'd be able to solve part of this mystery right away. So now I have to write a line to say that they didn't bring it with them.
Okay, so that was going to be another question I had. Is like, when writing this, you don't want them too packed with all these awesome gadgets, because it could be a quick solve, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
As a writer, you have to
limits on there. They can't be. It's kind of like if Batman had everything in his utility belt. Like, there's got to be some limits to their abilities.
Right. All right, so we have J. Robert Dean says a vest with a hot dog dispenser would be great. All right, I could see if you're facing off against a giant lion or something, and you need a quick snack to throw at them. That would be good. And then let's see. He also said, John, do you reread previous volumes when you write your next books, or do you keep a notebook to keep track of your key points?
I don't keep a notebook, but I do read the previous books as I'm writing, just to make sure I'm keeping things more or less consistent.
Of course, we want some kind of consistency.
Every now and then you realize you might have written yourself into a hole when you go back and you read a book and you're like, oh wait, this character never met that character, so or vice versa.
Gotcha.
and that's kind of tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also they still make me laugh.
Absolutely. Yes, that's the beauty of it, right? All right, so let's draw some gadgets. What do you think? You want to draw some gadget ideas, or you want to do
sure. Or so like usually the way I think of gadgets is I usually think of like what would they go undercover as. So
Okay.
what can their vest be, like a construction vest or a train engineer or virtually anything. And then I usually think of gadgets that would be suitable for that job, but then also some that would be just absurd and crazy and wild. So if they
Yes.
were, if they're, I like your idea that the hot dog
Dispenser.
dispenser would be involved in like a lion taming situation.
Yes.
So I'm gonna draw that. I think I'm gonna draw a vest that they might have in a lion taming sort of situation.
Excellent. Okay, so there's multiple different vests that match the disguises of the investigators.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So they usually have to go and get a customized vest for each undercover assignment. That's
Okay.
usually what scenario they're stuck in.
Okay. All right.
So I don't know if people will be able to see.
We'll make you solo here. So here we go.
Okay. So so I'm gonna draw a vest, and the way I draw the vests are pretty easy. It's kind of like an M shape with a W at the bottom. That might be a little bit wonky, but there you go.
Good.
And then a couple of buttons, and there you go. So there's the basic vest shape. So if this is going to be, I'm going to draw Mango. There's one of the gators. I'm going to draw Mango here. It's going to be tough because I usually never draw like this.
Yes, of course.
There you go. And some eyes like that. There we go. And give him a quick smile. Okay. Of course, there's more to him. He does have arms and stuff, but that's a good start.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's a lion tamer with a hot dog dispenser. So I'm gonna just start with the vest gadget here. Their gadgets are usually attached. They start off attached anyway to like little robotic arms. Usually they come out of the buttons, but they can almost kind of come out of anywhere. It's a little bit like Inspector Gadget.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna have a hot dog stuck at the end of this thing. Almost looks like a cigar. There we go. There's a hot dog with a little seam at the end. And so
no bun necessary, right? No bun necessary.
Yeah. So he's a lion tamer. So he can either be sort of like, should he be like in the jungle trying to find a lion, or should he be like a circus lion tamer?
I'm thinking in the jungle.
In the jungle. Okay,
yeah.
So I'm gonna give him some like leopard spots so that he can blend in. This is nice. So he's gonna look. He might look a little bit like a Dalmatian, but this is supposed to be like leopard spots. He's like Craven the Hunter, from Spider-Man, I guess, in this scenario. Trying to lure I'll give him the the fur collar that Craven has. So he's trying to lure some lions with hot dogs, but also not get eaten by other animals. So he's disguised as a leopard here. I'm kind of losing my angle. I'm just going to finish off his body more or less. It's going to be a little wonky. And give him some feet here. There you go. Give him a tail like that. It's got little ridges. And then his arm over there. And then I'll have him waving his other arm.
Yoo-hoo, lion.
That's right. It's like, yo, lion, I got some hot dogs. Give him some eyebrows there. Okay. And then so that's basically him in his lion attracting
I love that.
hot dog dispensing disguise.
Fantastic. And J. Robert says Craven. So
Craven. Yes.
there you go.
There you
That's
go.
that's great stuff.
There you go. And that's basically, a lot of times that's kind of just how randomly it all comes together.
Right.
There are some things that aren't really planned. I just the alligators end up in a crazy situation. So whatever is funniest or silliest is usually the best way to do it.
That's fantastic. Fantastic, John. We have a question from our good friend John Gallagher. He says, do you ever put cameos of Hippopotamuster or Kitten Construction Company in Investigators?
I do, very much so. There's Hippo and Red Panda from Hippopotamuster can be seen near the end or near the middle-ish to the end of the first Investigators. They're in a background scene. One of the kittens, Bubbles, the white cat, is actually in a scene in the first book.
Okay.
And retroactively references what happens in the first Investigators all the way back in the first Kitten Construction Company. I'm kind of loosely connecting the worlds. And then the second Investigators, you can see all three kittens. They have a more noticeable cameo.
Oh, that's fantastic. Very cool. And how about Friends? Do you ever put in Friends into your into the background, like background characters?
Like Monica and Chandler.
Oh.
No. Yeah. Just dated 90s references.
Yes.
No, sometimes actually I did. There's a scene in the flashback, the Dr. Copter flashback, where he goes into this little tavern in Scotland where my friend Dave, and frequent collaborator, there's little cartoons of us arm wrestling in the background.
Oh, fantastic.
But yeah, sometimes I'll work things in. It's tough because with the cartoon style, it's so very, very boiled down into just geometric shapes that it can be hard to do like a caricature of a real person and have, unless it's like a celebrity or something where you can kind of make it recognizable. It's like, a lot of times I'll draw my friends as little cartoons, but I'm gonna, they won't even notice that it's supposed to be them. I'll notice it.
True.
Like I put my family in the background of Hippopotamuster, but I didn't tell the colorist that it was my family, so they just went with whatever colors. Yeah. So it doesn't look like them now, but I know it's them.
Right. Well, John, thank you so much for being with us today. We had a fun time. Ladies and gentlemen, you can go to investigatorsbooks.com. You go to any, you can pick up these fun books wherever books are sold. And John, we hope to see you at future conventions in real life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us today. And keep on investigating.
I will. Thank you for having me.
Suit up. All right. Thank you. Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So that was John Patrick Green, and that was a really fun time we had there. Coming up next, we have Jill Thompson. She's going to be on, and we're going to be reading a really fun book, Scary Godmother. Just one more reminder, get your supplies ready because we're going to be doing some creative crafts in about 20 minutes. So get your colored paper, glue, scissors, crayons, markers, and pencils. And we'll be doing some creative crafts with Carolyn coming up in about 20 minutes. But right now, I'd like to welcome to the room the amazing Jill Thompson. How are you, Jill? Good to see you. Let's see you. There you are.
How are you?
Good. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. It's a incredibly crisp and gray autumnal day, so perfect for Halloween, perfect for reading The Scary Godmother of the Boo Flu.
I think so. Yeah.
Dark. Let me see which way I can turn to make me less backlit.
Oh, there we go. Nice.
You never can tell until...
Sure. Until we're on, right? There you are. That looks good.
Much better.
Nice.
So, the way we've worked this, are we gonna have a split screen? Am I gonna?
So we are live now. We're good.
I just
yep.
need, I sent you PDFs so people will be able to see that art and see me at the same time. Or
let's see. I'm going to share that now. Let's see. Oh, sorry. Share application. Scary Godmother. Here we go. All right. So we'll probably do full screen because this art is amazing. So
I think full screen would be great. So I'll read along with what's up on the screen.
Okay.
Okay. This is called The Scary Godmother, the Boo Flu. It's the fourth book that I had done in order of Scary Godmother books. There are also comics, and all of this material is available in the Scary Godmother Omnibus that Dark Horse Comics puts out.
Mm-hmm.
But this is one singular story, which I thought would be good and easy to read on screens of all sizes. So I will begin. On a dark autumn night, with lots of work left to do, the Scary Godmother contracted the dreaded Boo Flu. Oh, and we've got two at a time. So first came the sweats, then her face got the pox. She shivered and shook from her head to her socks. While she sneezed and she coughed, her friends put her to bed, and a weak little voice whispered out of her head, "But what about Halloween?" The monsters all fretted and ran willy-nilly. Hannah giggled because she thought they looked silly. "Oh dear, it's disaster! Man, am I bumming! Without Scary Godmother, Halloween won't be coming!" "What's the big deal? Halloween is a cinch." "Are you kidding me, Hannah? We're in a real pinch." "I love Halloween. I know what goes on. Get some candy, a pumpkin. It's not hard to do. I'll take care of that job. You take care of this flu." So her pals dressed her up in a tutu and hat. She was handed a list and a broom and a cat, a thermos and lunch, a bag of supplies, and then Hannah Marie took off to the night skies. As she zoomed up into the indigo blue, she heard Mr. Pettibone, and Bugaboo too. "Good luck, little Hannah, we're counting on you." I can't do a really good Bugaboo voice because I don't have the octave.
Sounds great.
Trying to do it is really low and it comes right out of your chest. So I sound more like, I think I'm sounding like Louis Armstrong or something, and that's not what I'm intending to do. So kids, just make the lowest, grumbliest, under the bed monster voice you can think of when you do your own Bugaboo voices. Okay. So when Hannah checked out her list, she was shocked and surprised at the number of tasks and the paper's long size. She started her work, snagging ghost shrieks and moans. She constructed a scarecrow, using sticks as the bones. She assigned all the phantoms to their haunted house spaces. She scattered dry leaves to the tree-deprived places. She crocheted fresh cobwebs. She belfried the bats. She vacuumed the arches in Halloween cats. She coaxed the storm clouds out of warm autumn breezes. While Pettibone treated Scary's horrible sneezes. She conducted a chorus of full moon wolf howls. She set monster jaws into fierce toothy scowls. She poked her poor thumb sewing on monster parts. And one needs to take care during the electric kick starts. With time running out and so much at stake, she didn't have time for her unionized breaks. It's hard to eat sandwiches by the light of the moon, or sip slurps of soup while you're riding a broom. She wised up the owls. She wrapped up a mummy. She delivered some takeout for sea monsters' tummies. But when she arrived at the old pumpkin patch, the substitute godmother had met her match. I can't carve all of these. I've let everyone down. Halloween won't be coming to visit our town. I can see all the frowns on the boys' and girls' faces. Their costumes never worn to the Halloween places. Hannah's eyes began leaking. She made loud sobbing sounds. She caused Orson the vampire to wake in the ground. The vampire family caused much dirt to scatter as they decoffined themselves to see what was the matter. To see Hannah's tears would cause most hearts to shatter. We've been out camping, my mom, dad, and me. What could be so awful that you disturb such as we? But these are the vampires, used to sounds of sad weeping. Their concern extends to the quality of their sleeping. How does Scary do it? Get all of it done. I bragged to them all that I was number one. To carve all these pumpkins would take my whole life, and I'm not even allowed to use a sharp knife. The vampires laughed with sharp, pointy grins. My dear, we have knives already built in. To give you a hand, here's what we will do. We'll bite out the faces. You scoop out the goo. And that's just what they did all through the night. They chewed jack-o'-lanterns with monstrous delight. Back at Scary's bedside, progress was made. Professor Toad was called to administer an old-timey healing aid. Soon the boo flu was vanquished, all pox, shakes, and sneezes. No longer did her lungs make rattling wheezes. It's time to help Hannah. There's no time to spare. Mr. Pettibone, Bugaboo, I'll race you there. With all sickness banished from her haunted hair, Scary Godmother quickly took to the air. With 3 pumpkins remaining, the vamps widened their eyes. We've got to leave, Hannah. The sun's on the rise. They scrambled back into their earth-covered beds as Halloween sun kissed our girl's weary head. A sleep-deprived Hannah cast her eyes to the street. She twiddled her fingers and shuffled her feet. I'm sorry I bit off more than I could chew. Halloween's here with 3 still left to do. I've blown the deadline. There's lots left on the list. I guess that this year, Halloween will be missed. Scary Godmother just laughed. A magical sound. In the North Woods, when Halloween rolls around, sometimes there's already snow on the ground. And do you think the chill air keeps our spirit away? Snow monsters are made to help celebrate the day. And does the green of the palm trees or the sand on the beach keep bags of sweet candy out of trick-or-treat reach? Halloween's more than lists or the pumpkiny part. It's the spookity feeling you have deep in your heart. With long purple shadows, a good chill up your spine, that heart-racing feeling comes from me here and mine. This is Hannah's little sister, Ellie. Ooh, Pookie, tick-a-tee! Halloween comes to you on monster feet, creeping. And how did Hannah celebrate her Halloween? By sleeping. The end. So
Absolutely
if you get
gorgeous.
outside to go trick-or-treating this year, it doesn't mean you won't have a great Halloween. It means you'll have a cozy and wonderful Halloween that's totally unique. And I'm going to wear a costume, and I know you're going to wear a costume, and that still means there's candy.
That's right. That's right. That was absolutely beautiful. It's such a delightful story. So you sent me that yesterday, and I read through it, and now reading through it again, I picked up other things that I missed the first time. So just your art is amazing. It's just full of surprises, and that's just something that's wonderful. That I love reading these types of books with my son. He's 5, and he'll pick up on those little things. And I know after reading a book like this, he'll be running around the house pretending to be the monster. Is that Bugaboo? Is he the big round monster? And I could just picture him doing that. So fantastic job as always, Jill. Your artwork's amazing.
I think if you don't have this book and you want to get it, or you can look back over this PDF, you yourself. But you said that reading it once, I tried to make sure when I did the art that I put lots of interesting little details that even when you read something as quickly as I did, that whoever's looking at the pictures will be able to see all sorts of fun stuff in the background and things that are important to me. Because when I was little, that's the kind of stuff I really liked. I enjoyed not only just what was basically going on, but then you would see all the time and effort that the artists or illustrators would put in to make either little jokes or draw something that suddenly became something that I caught on and was a touchstone to me. One of the books that's popping into my head right now is was a book called The Witch Next Door. And I think it was about someone who was trick-or-treating, like they lived in a big city, and they're in the apartment next to them there was a witch. So it wasn't what you would consider traditional any kind of trick-or-treating, because it was a big city street, and living in Chicago, that really spoke to me, because we do have wonderful parks and lots of great nature preserves, and our streets are lined with wonderful trees, but it's super busy. And that I try and bring a lot of those things that meant something to me to the Scary Godmother books that I do. And for the Scary Godmother Halloween special, I just found out a couple days ago that if you live in Canada, there's a streaming service called Crave that is is going to be airing both Scary Godmother Halloween specials on Crave, which I think is a streaming app. But
very cool.
You can get it if you're in Canada. So it hasn't been on TV in a while, and hopefully this will be the beginning of it getting on all of the streaming services. And those shows are based on all of my books.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Very cool. And I gotta say, probably one of my favorite images was when she was vacuuming the cats to get that arch.
Those were all my cats. I've only had one cat. He's actually who the Boozle is based on. because he passed away, and he had a little crook in his tail, like the Boozle's tail.
Mhm.
And he was a cat who would let me vacuum him. He was the
Really?
only cat I've ever had that's not terrified of the vacuum cleaner.
I've never heard of that. Really?
My two current cats, even though my cat Oberon is like super possessive of me and likes to be around me doing everything I do. If like at one point, when I was really busy, I actually had a lady come in to clean my house because she could clean it in 2 hours and it would take me like 12 hours to clean
Right,
it. I don't
right.
know why. He never bothers her and he's not afraid when she would use the vacuum cleaner. But if I bring the vacuum cleaner out of the closet, both my dudes run away. But Basil, who became the Boozle, he would just lay in his chair, and he would look at me, and all the other cats would scatter. Because my ex-boyfriend and I had lots of cats together, so
Right.
technically all the cats in that picture are cats that I wanted to pay homage to, and other people's cats as well. So it's like either cats that I've owned or cats that friends have owned that have either passed on or were currently living. And but Basil would sit there and I could vacuum him.
So was this image inspired by that?
Kind of.
Okay.
Also, I thought, like, how would a little kid make the cats do that Halloween?
Yeah. And that's brilliant when I saw that. I was like,
stuff their backs up into an unnatural position to make all the hair stand up.
yeah.
Because I would love if I could vacuum these guys that I've got now, so I wouldn't have so much hair to vacuum.
Right, you take care of the hair problem before it becomes a hair problem.
But Basil would let me. I'd put the upholstery attachment on the vacuum cleaner, and he would just sit there, and I would start rubbing him with it. Like, so I was like, oh, "This is great," and he would start purring, and I would lift his up and get his belly.
Oh my gosh! Really?
Yeah, he would not run away from it. I think it's because when I got him, he was so small. And I used to carry him everywhere. I used to put him in my hood of my hoodie or carry him on my shoulder. That I don't think he thought anything that I would have would be a scary thing because he totally trusted me. So it was just kind of like, whatever, Jill,
Yeah.
And it was great. But there were a lot of other cats that, had long, they would run away and hairballs would fly off of them.
Yeah.
Because they'd be scared.
Right. And now for this art, I know. Do you mainly work just with watercolor for all your pieces, or because this is all the books that you've done I've always admired. Like Beasts of Burden was one of my favorites. And any tips or tricks that you can share with young artists that might want to get into watercolor? Myself, I always wanted to try watercolor. I know recently on your Facebook page, you've been posting all these little jack-o'-lantern artworks you've been doing.
Yeah, that's from my Instagram. So if people follow me on my Instagram, it gets reposted. And I've been putting them on my TikTok too. I'm the same on most other social media other than Facebook. I'm just my name, but on Instagram, I'm the Jill Thompson. Because I wanted to I don't want to sound pretentious, but I wanted to keep my name without a bunch of random numbers after it.
Right.
So, and also there was a time when I used to work with Neil Gaiman, and when I would call him on the phone about something we would do, he would always like tease me and be a goof. Like when I would say, "Hi Neil, it's Jill," and he would go, "Is this Jill Thompson? Is this the Jill Thompson who I worked with on Sandman? Jill Thompson, who's doing such wonderful, is the Jill," and he would say that all the time. And I was like, "Well, that's going to be my handle now."
Perfect.
It sounds really good in the English accent.
Yeah.
So on my Instagram at the Jill Thompson or my TikTok at the Jill Thompson, I'm doing time lapses of my watercolor process. And except for the bits where I'm drying things off with the hairdryer, which I might even include in one of these because sometimes people think it dries that fast.
Right.
But it doesn't. Either you can see a basic process of how I work on something really small. And I will be posting other longer process videos there. I also have another Instagram called Scary Godmother's House. And that's specifically got Scary Godmother stuff on it. And I'm working on a new Scary Godmother book, so I want to post more of that. And I have a Patreon, which I'm planning on posting like all of the work in progress on the next book. So you'll be able to see everything as it goes. And that should be starting incredibly soon. The Patreon is up there. It's just that I had a bunch of other work that I was finishing before I could, dive straight into the next Scary Godmother book.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And then do you have any tips or like, I guess, book suggestions for young artists that are trying to get into watercoloring?
Well, let's see. There's a book. Well, my old watercolor instructor had a book which you can find on Amazon, but just as used. Some of them are super expensive. Some of them are very cheap. Called How to Make a Painting. And
Okay.
I'm trained as like in traditional watercolor theory. So, like landscape painting and stuff like that. So it's like all the rules about how watercolor works are in that book. So I've taken what I learned there and I've applied it to comics, right? And Mike Mignola made a comment once where he said that when we were talking about painting, it's like, I don't paint my comics like Alex Ross paints comics or some other, I'm thinking of images from Instagram of all the great artists that I follow who paint something that's a lot more realistic without line. So what I feel like I do in my work is I draw comics with paint.
Okay,
And I don't use any pen and ink line before I paint that. So it goes pencil, watercolor, and an outline in watercolor.
Wow.
So it's tedious and it takes a very long time per page. So my advice to people who are interested in doing watercolor is learn how to control the medium before you start trying to work on your faces or whatever.
Right.
Work back to front when you're painting something.
Okay.
And you also have to be very careful for value, and you have to know color theory. It's like, and don't be afraid to use the white of the paper as your brightest light, and make sure that your darkest dark is like 100% like a black style. Not that's shade, not using black as a dark. You can, but sometimes people think, they're worried that their work, I'm trying to explain this without any visuals. They work on something a lot, but then everything is the same value.
Right.
Any depth perception, because they're so afraid of messing up with watercolor that they do a lot of little layers, and then suddenly everything becomes the same tone. And so it's like, what I suggest is on the side of your paper, if you have like your drawing over here and then a scrap piece of paper, put some black on there so you can see how dark you can go.
Okay.
Because watercolor, when you put it on there, it looks really dark, but then it dries lighter, and then you keep going back into it, and it might muddy up. Those are some simple tips when you're working on stuff, and you're gonna mess up.
That's right. And
it's easy. Like with your digital stuff, I can't do digital. Well, not can't. I'm not good at it yet. It's a different mindset, and the way I learned to draw and paint, every setting in Procreate or any other digital program, I don't have to figure out how to move my brush in my hand. I just know how it feels. But there are like 12 settings that I have to adjust to make the brush or the pen look like what I need it to. And I don't even know what any of those terms mean. So I'm so afraid to try and adjust something. They're like, oh, just try it. Which I guess is mine. Don't be afraid. You're going to mess up.
I think that's the bottom line, right? Is that practice, and don't be afraid to mess up.
And it's okay, you're going to mess up. There have been times when I've finished a whole page, like some of the things that you just saw.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I'll either spill something. Like sometimes I dropped my paintbrush, and my drawing table is on a slight slant because of a shoulder injury I have. I can't bend over like this all the time, or else so I have to leave it on a little bit of an angle. So the pen will roll down my paper. So for some reason, it's always when I'm using black or a super dark indigo or something that stains like crazy, and I'll start painting and it'll like flip over my thumb and it rolled down the back of my thumb and then down my paper, leaving this big long trail. and I thought I could lift it up, but it wasn't. It immediately stained everything, and I had to just tear up the page and do
Oh,
it. And it was so hard to do, but I've done that more than once.
Right.
Or I realize something isn't good after I've spent a lot of time on it. It's like, ugh, I can do better than this. And I'll move on to the next page and work until I'm finished and then come back to
and I
the
think
one that
that's
I messed up because
I
you'll
think
fret
that's
over it too much.
yeah. I think that's a good thing that that to let young artists know that you're gonna make mistakes. Even stuff like this does happen in the studio, and that you just have to keep at it. But Jill, thank you so much for being with us today. The book was amazing. They can find out more about you on the scarygodmother.com.
That's
And
my website that sells things.
yep, and then
So if you
follow
want to
her.
yeah, there.
Follow her at
if you
Jill
want to find out
at
more about everything. That's where you go.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Jill. It's good seeing you. And I can't wait to see you in real life at all the comic conventions.
I know.
And have a happy Halloween.
You too. Have a happy Halloween.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, now is your chance. Remember, get your supplies ready because we have joining with us is my good friend, Carolyn. How are you, Carolyn?
Hello. Hey, how's it going? Hey, everybody
All
out there in the virtual world.
Yeah. So here we are. We're going to be doing some crafts. I've been telling people to get their craft supplies ready, and I think let's go right into it.
Let's
So
get into
Carolyn,
it.
yeah, you get your stuff ready as things were,
I'm
as the world went into sort of a work from home and that kind of atmosphere. Carolyn was doing these awesome posts about being creative and these really quick creative challenges. So go ahead, Carolyn. What are we starting with?
Yeah, we're going to start with a very simple. This is actually, I believe, the second challenge that we did for Carolyn's Creative Challenge. What we're going to do is just get out a piece of paper. I have this to show you guys. Oh, there we go. I'll move over like this. And I just taped up a piece of white paper onto a board. So it's nothing fancy. It's just so that you can see it on here. But you can just use a regular white piece of paper. And I'm going to close my eyes. And somebody needs to give me like something to draw. Because what I did for mine was an apple. So I could do like an apple. But we're just going to do loose drawings that we have our eyes shut. And it's called Drawing from Memory.
All right, flamingo.
So here I go with the little apple first. And
Okay,
then you said flamingo? Okay, so here we go. Okay. I'm going to try to draw a flamingo, which should be quite funny to do. All right, and then they have a leg, and then they have another leg sticking out like that. Okay, now I want to see what I drew. Woo! All right.
That's good. That's
now
fantastic.
we're kind of also doing some blind contour work, and a contour, for me, describes that you are not taking your pencil off the page. Right. So, and then by doing a blind contour, we have our eyes shut. And you can blindfold yourself if you're, maybe afraid that you're going to open your eyes, have fun with it like that. You can play games with it kind of in that sense, like a blind Pictionary. You can do all types of games with this method, and it's really cool. Anyone want to give out another suggestion out there in the virtual world?
Anyone in the virtual world? Any suggestions?
Mark, you can give out another word for me to do here.
Okay. All right. Guitar.
Oh my gosh, guitar. Okay.
Yes. I like to keep it easy for you,
I don't know. This can sometimes be difficult and sometimes it's cool to see how the drawings will overlap on one page.
That is really cool.
All right, I got some cool drawings here, and also something else I like to do. I used to also draw while I would attend live concerts, and so now we can't really do that anymore. But it's cool because I would always draw like different members of the band in different colors. So if we want to, I can switch it up and do a pink.
All right.
Which would have been cool for the flamingo. But can anyone name another pink thing?
Any other suggestions from the audience? Comment away.
What is pink? A pink grapefruit? Okay, I'm going to draw one that's sliced open.
Ooh, sliced open even.
And you guys can draw along at home with all these suggestions here. And now I'm going to lift up my pencil because I know that the grapefruit has some textured dots. So I'm just going to do some little dots. Okay, that's my grapefruit. So, but yeah, like doing that exercise is it's enlivening. It makes you perk up. It makes you really excited to draw. And also when when you're warming up, you don't want to take things as seriously. You want to be loose. You want to be liquid. You want to make sure that you're really not rigid.
Right.
I know sometimes people can tense up. They'll see a blank page and be like, oh my gosh, this is frightening to me. So, doing something like this, it's just something fun. You don't have to take it very seriously.
That's what I was just going to say. It's good to be loose and just have fun with it. You don't have to.
Yeah. So
right.
this is one example that we can do that we'll just show you real quick. It's called drawing while, with your eyes closed. So
drawing with your eyes closed. I think. May I take a challenge, or here you can do it as well?
Sure.
We'll do one from J. Robert Deans as asking for a car.
Oh, a car.
Right?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Thank you so much for a difficult one.
All right. So now I'm going to close my eyes as well.
Okay. Okay, let's go here.
All right.
It's fun.
That's great.
And sometimes you can get different shapes that you never thought you would have tried, So
right.
It's really cool to be able to try these different things.
It looks like mine has I was trying to draw the guy in the window, but it looks like he's a stuntman that's jumping onto the car now. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's this really I kind of like doing this because when I was talking about the other bands that I would draw, I would draw like different players of the bands and overlap them in different colors, and there's a lot of energy to that. So it was really fun to be able to do that.
Nice, very cool, nice quick craft there. I love it.
Quick craft.
Yeah.
Do you want to move on to the next craft?
On to another quick craft. I think we got time probably for maybe 2 more, maybe. We'll see.
2 more sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, so now for the next one, it's important to get a glue. Any type of glue works. I just happen to have on hand some glue stick. And then scissors and glue and scissors. And then you can use craft paper. I have a whole stack of craft paper.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it's already drawn on. I just like to, there's a little elephant I might have done while blind drawing. And I just grab anything really because I have so much stuff that I just reuse it over and over again. So I'm going to use a base paper of just plain white.
Okay.
And what we're going to do is we're going to make a fantasy pizza. Now you can just draw it if you want. Or you can make it out of paper if you want. You can really do whatever you want. There's no rules. Just a fantasy paper out of any type of medium that you want. So I'm just going to take some brown and I'm going to cut out my favorite shape for pizza. I know pizza comes in different shapes. Sometimes people like a square. Sometimes people like a triangle, and I'm going to go with the traditional triangle. And I'm going to take glue stick. And we're just going to do this real quick. And so that's the cool thing about kind of giving yourself a little time frame or just working fast is that you don't have time to think about it. You don't have time to diddle dally around and say like, oh, should I angle this properly and all that? But I'm just going to have fun with it. So I'm going to glue on the pizza slice. And you guys can work from home too along with this and use #KidsLoveComics and show us what you're making.
Absolutely.
Because we'd love to see your art. So for my fantasy pizza, I know this is going to sound weird, but over this quarantine time, I've actually loved this combination of tell me if this sounds disgusting, Mark.
Sure.
Or anybody at home. Pineapple artichoke pizza.
Okay. Yeah, I could go for that.
Okay, yeah.
We're getting thumbs down from John Gallagher, but I could go for that.
Is he one of those people that doesn't like pineapple on his pizza at all?
Don't ruin my pizza.
No.
No
No.
good.
Wait, why is it no good? I need to know why. Just the
just
pineapple
wrong.
part of it, or artichoke,
Yes,
or all of it?
Yes. I don't know what artichoke tastes like because I'm afraid.
Really?
Because it's a vegetable.
Oh no,
Yeah.
veggies.
No, I like veggies, but not on my pizza. No.
So here I just put some really quick orange. I don't know if you guys can see.
Yeah.
Some orange cutouts, and I'm just gonna put that on, kind of to represent the cheese, I guess. Why not? Now, when I did this earlier this year, I didn't do it cut out. I did this in crayon.
Mhm.
So you can really do whatever you want to do. And again, we're just working fast to show you some ideas. And sometimes when I was doing these creative craft challenges, I don't like to spend that much time on it. Because even though, like, in a theory, we have all the time in the world.
Right.
Everyone's like, oh, we're at home, we have all the time in the world. But we have other things to do. We're busy, You just got to get the creative juices flowing and get it out of you.
Absolutely.
So here I have the cheese on here.
All right.
And I'm going to do some pineapples.
Yeah, see, I do like pineapple on the pizza. The rest of my family just look at me weird when I do the Hawaiian pie, pineapple and ham.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I mean, it is a peculiar taste. What can you say? I mean, I haven't had artichokes on it.
No.
Sorry, not artichokes, anchovies. Sorry, I meant to say.
No, I had it once, and it was just too powerful. Just too powerful. It's like, yeah, all right. No.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I'll never try it in my lifetime, but I just haven't made that leap yet.
I love that my segments always come back to food. Yesterday I did cereal and doodles. Today we're doing crafts and pizza. So
I mean, it's always good to make some pizza. So I have some pineapples on here, and then now, you know what else is a really good combination that we've tried? Salami and pepperoni together.
Oh,
it's just like, it's kind of like an extra dose of meat.
Dig
it's
it.
in it. And also for artichoke, I'm not too sure what type of color we're going to use, but I found this little scribble page, and I'm going to use this for artichokes. So I'm just going to cut it out. As Joey Gladstone would say. I believe that's his name. And I'm just going to make some weird looking artichokes. I'm going to make these little frazzled edges, because why not?
I like it. And as you're doing that, I'm showing that there's other ways. Like Carolyn said, you can also do it on paper if you got just paper and crayons, and just draw what you want on your pizza. If you just want to just draw a slice and do a bunch of different squiggles and stuff, and then you can tell us what it is later. A lot of times, maybe I have gummy worms on my pizza now. I don't know.
Exactly. I mean, this is called a fantasy pizza, so you can really do. You don't have to be as literal with things. You can put on something that you would never imagine eating, like artichokes. You can put on anything you want. So I got some crazy artichokes that actually look like jellyfish. So why not have some jellyfish pizza?
There you go. Very nice.
Eat it. Put it in the microwave. You got it, man. And, for the heck of it, I think every pizza should, be represented with pepperoni. See, look, you can see I've already cut out circles of this page from another craft that I'm just going to reuse because.
Right. And probably the other craft, it was pepperoni that you were making, right?
It looks like I did actually make a cherry.
A cherry. Okay.
And I can actually show you that craft I have off to the side. This is from a different craft that I did earlier.
Oh, wow.
And I used, I don't know if you guys can tell, but there's some 3D elements here using the cardboard, and I used, what's it called? Shaving cream with glue, and it can make like kind of a puffy paint. Wow. And then I took shavings of a crayon using scissors, and I just shaved off the crayon to make the sprinkles. And there's a cherry that I cut out from before.
That's great.
But yes, let's add some pepperoni real quick.
All right, from the chat, we have Jay Robert asking, Mark, have you ever tried buffalo wing pizza? Now, for those that don't know, the Mariano brothers, myself and my brother Chris, we always have wings wherever we go. Anytime we go to a comic convention, we try the wings from that location. And yes, of course, I've had buffalo wings on my pizza. Absolutely. I even had pizza on top of my buffalo wings. So,
whoa.
yes.
This is some good looking pizza right here. So I'm going to put a couple complimentary pepperonis on here because I feel like you do need some pepperonis to showcase on a pizza. So here I have my fantasy pizza.
That is awesome. Let me get to a full shot there.
Something must have fell off of it.
Excellent.
Yeah. So we're just doing this really quick. It's something fun to do and cut out different shapes, or you can draw it.
Yeah.
It's a fun time to be had to make your fantasy pizza.
Awesome.
See, look, I feel like those do look like some jellyfishes. So why not put
maybe
some
you got
jellyfish
jellyfish
on
on
your
the pizza. Right.
Yeah. There we go.
Be popular in the Bikini Bottom with SpongeBob. He'll dig it.
I'll dig it.
Yeah. And then if you just want to show us what, like some other ones, like you showed us maybe like the end result, like you showed, like, do you have any more, like the ice cream cone you did?
Yeah, I have a few fun stuff. There's some stuff I have here that I haven't shown anywhere else. So you're getting an exclusive.
All right. So we're getting an exclusive. And immediately following us, we're going to have Judd Winnick, and he'll be talking about high-low. So go ahead, Carolyn. Show us.
Okay, so everyone knows that the toilet paper roll, people are like, oh, what should we do with that? So randomly, I actually wanted to use it as a stamp. So I started doing this just by cutting off the top part and making it a stamp. And then from there, I was like, oh, I can use this and make it into a pumpkin guy.
Very
nice. This guy
nice.
ended up being so cute. And then I was like, well, from there, we can make a little ghost guy.
Oh, how cute.
And so these guys have never been seen anywhere before. They weren't even planning to be here, but they're here.
They just showed up.
They say, happy Halloween. They say, ooh, happy Halloween.
I love it.
But we have so many cool things that we've done. And if you want to check out all the challenges, they're on my website. And then one small
thing. Is that CarolynBalewski.com?
Yes, CarolynBalewski.com. And if you go up on the top link, it's the challenges link. You'll see over 50 challenges. And
please tell me you're putting these in a book, please. I've been every comment I'm saying, where's the book? Please tell me.
Where's the book? No. Yeah. I'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can do about that.
Yeah, definitely would be amazing.
Just one more quick thing we can do. I just colored in like some random fall colors with crayons on a paper already, and you can fold it in half. And what we're going to do is make these symmetrical looking leaves. So you can make your own fall leaves.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And, everyone knows this trick too. Getting a large book, putting these leaves inside, and making them flat, real leaves that you can make completely flat. And then you can put crayon above it on a piece of paper. And so it makes that pattern too. So there's lots of fun stuff you can do with leaves right now for the fall.
It's so fun.
It's very exciting.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, Carolyn, thank you again for being with us. I think we definitely got to do this again. I just love all these quick crafts, and I think it's so simple for families at home. I think we just gave them a lot of good ideas that, it's going to start getting colder out there. We're going to have some rainy weather again. And so these are some fun quick crafts that they can find if they just go right here to CarolynBalewski.com. And thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
One more special thing, since you guys have joined us today, for the next 24 hours, I have a coupon code. If you go to my store, it's BCC 2020 to get 20% off.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So that's BCC 2020. That's going to be the coupon code if you go to CarolynBalewski.com.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Mark. And thank you to Baltimore Comic-Con and Kids Love Comics and John and all you guys for doing such a great job hosting all these events this weekend.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Good seeing you.
Good seeing you guys.
Yeah. John, how are you, sir?
Am I there? Yes, I am.
I'm sorry.
Good. I'm good. I'm so excited to share this interview with Judd Winnick, and I'm glad that you to see Carolyn's cool crafts, because I think that's something that is always a highlight at the Baltimore Comic Con. So it's neat we could have that again for our virtual show.
Yeah.
So yeah, but if everybody's ready, we've got a nice interview with Judd Winnick. He's going to talk about his origin of high-low, how he got into it, how, you know, a lot of people, parents know that Judd Winnick is known as creator of a bunch of cool Batman comics, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and he sort of explains why he created High-Low, which is a really great graphic novel series that everybody should check out. So here we go. I'm going to get started up and enjoy, everybody. Hi, everybody. John Gallagher here at the Kids Love Comics page. I hope you're all having a good weekend and glad that you're here with us. I have with me a very special guest, Mr. Judd Winnick, who is very well known for not only working on what we call mainstream comics for DC Comics under the Red Hood, but part of the reason he's here with us today is for his very special graphic novel series, High-Low, which I'm a big fan of. Members of my family are as well. And welcome, Judd.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's a big thrill. Thanks.
That's great. Well, and how many High-Low books are out right now?
We have 6 High-Low books came out. Number 7 is coming out February 2nd. I'll show the kids the cover in a little bit. I'm very, very lucky. It's been a book a year for the last 6 years, and people seem to dig it. So it's awesome. I tell the same joke over and over again. As you know, as a fellow cartoonist, we live like 10-year-olds. We make things up and then we draw them while we half watch television, which is pretty much what I did when I was 10. So it's a great job to have.
Exactly. And reading your books, I feel as though you and I might have watched a lot of the same cartoons, TV shows, and movies.
Oh, for sure. I'm gonna let's see. Bloom County, lots of Calvin and Hobbes when we were older. We were already like teenagers plus by the time Calvin and Hobbes came out. A lot of Looney Tunes, I assume.
Yes.
Yes.
Big Chuck Jones fan.
Huge Chuck Jones fan. If you ever, kids, let me put it this way: if you ever meet a cartoonist and they don't like Chuck Jones, you actually haven't met a cartoonist. You've met somebody who's, I don't know what they're doing in the trade. Like, yeah, Chuck's okay. I'm more of like, no, Chuck Jones. And if you don't know what we're talking about, just go to YouTube and look up Chuck Jones, Bugs Bunny, Chuck Jones, Daffy Duck. Like, actually, you all talk amongst yourselves. I'm gonna talk to John about this for a second. So for me, the best is Chuck Jones doing Daffy Duck. And what I love about it is it's not Daffy Duck at his daffiest. He's just so angry. He's so his Daffy Duck is so brutally, wonderfully ticked off. That's carried through most of my work. Ticked off characters. I love it.
Oh yeah, and Duck Amuck was one of the great cartoon shorts where he's being affected by an unknown artist off screen who's erasing him and drawing him. And that's brilliant too.
Yes. Yeah, well, yes, we get to play the Almighty a little bit. Now,
right.
Cartoonist as God, yes.
Exactly. And with that, I'm going to hand over the screen and the presentation to you, and can't wait to see what you're going to share with us.
Oh, awesome. Cool. Okay. So for everyone playing at home, excuse me while I do this. I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to decide on I'm going to try the desktop. Let's try the desktop. Let's do that. And I think with the desktop, this way you can actually see me while I talk. So I should be up there in there. Okay. So what I'm going to do, kids and grown-ups playing at home, I'm going to give this little talk. I'm going to tell a little story. And then when we're done, John and I are going to chit chat and answer some questions. So hold all those. If we were at a cafeteria or a cafetorium or an auditorium at a school right now, I'd be saying like, so just hold all those questions to the end. If you raise your hand, I'm not going to call on you because I'm still telling my story. So anyway, let us begin. So this is me. I'm Judd Winnick. I'm a cartoonist. It's just about the best job in the whole wide world. And I do the Hilo series. As we talked about, we got 6 Hilo books out right now. And next year we got number 7. This is the 7th Hilo book. This is, you can see it's Hilo, Gina, the girl who broke the word. And the book comes out February 2nd, 2021. And now I've made everyone publicity happy that I mentioned it. But as I said, I wanted to tell you guys a story. And this is the story of how I came up with Hilo and stuff. So the story about how I came up with Hilo and stuff. So our story begins with me as a kid, which was a long, long, long time ago when dinosaurs still roamed the earth, that long ago. And when I was a kid, I was a very big fan of hitting buttons. So like I'm trying to get my keynote to move forward. Bear with me. Okay, there we go. It's too much. Let's go back. There it is. I was a very big fan of Star Wars. I was a very big fan of Looney Tunes that we were just talking about, and Chuck Jones. I was a huge fan of monster movies. And when I say monster movies, I do mean monster movies, not scary movies. I mean guys in costumes jumping around on models of cities, that kind of monster movie. I was a huge fan of that. And in particular, my favorite movie was King Kong. I loved King Kong. And I also love drawing pictures, probably more so than anything else. That's who I was. So as a kid, I think I was happiest if I was drawing pictures while half watching a monster movie on television. That was me as a kid. Now, the thing I loved probably to draw more than anything else was, as I said, King Kong. It was probably my favorite piece of creative work to work on. And I would draw King Kong. And I would draw King Kong over and over again. But before I get into that, do you all know the story of King Kong? Do you know? Some of you probably do, some of you don't. You're probably not getting a proper education. So, okay, 30 seconds. Here's the short version of the story of King Kong. King Kong was a 100-foot tall gorilla who lived on Skull Island, which was his prehistoric island. One day, a bunch of explorers came to Skull Island. They found King Kong. They captured him. They brought him back to New York City, where he escaped, ran amok, climbed the Empire State Building, and got shot down by airplanes. That's the short version of King Kong. You should probably go find the long version. Anyway, I tell you that, tell you this. So I used to draw King Kong over and over again. But specifically, I used to do the same drawing of King Kong over and over again. I used to draw the Empire State Building. And when I say the Empire State Building, I mean the whole building, including every single window in the building. And when I was finally done drawing the building, I would draw King Kong at top and the airplanes trying to shoot him down. Now, the thing is, I didn't really want to draw the Empire State Building with all the windows in there. I was really not interested in that. The part I really wanted to draw was just this scene at top. I really just wanted to draw King Kong and the airplanes at top. This is what I really wanted to draw as a kid. But for some reason, I felt like I had to draw the entire building before I would draw King Kong at top. I don't know why, but I did. And honestly, I did this for years. Now, jump ahead a few years later. So small Judd grows up and he's a little less small Judd. And I found a few other interests. In particular, I fall in love with comic strips, the funnies. Y'all know what comic strips are? Most of you do. More importantly, we have to go back in history again. When I was a kid, long ago, when dinosaurs still roamed the earth, I loved comic strips. And we had these things called newspapers. Newspapers are a lot like iPads that have current events on them. They're and they're made out of paper. So envision an iPad made out of paper, that's a newspaper. But more importantly, in these newspapers, in the middle, usually 2 to 3 pages of it, you had the funnies, comic strips. And every day we would get a newspaper delivered to the house, and every day there'd be 2 to 3 pages of comic strips and the funnies. And on Sunday, they showed up in color. and I loved them. I loved comic strips. And it was around this time that, well, I was looking at comic strips and I noticed like, that's kind of how I draw. That's kind of who I am, and I started drawing my own cartoons. Well, in particular, it is how I used to draw. For example, this is a cat, right? Obviously, that's a cat. Okay. This is Garfield, right? Also a cat. They don't really look alike. But as a kid, I realized that I couldn't draw the realistic looking cat, but I could draw Garfield. And I discovered through comic strips, that's how I draw. That's how I do things. That's how I create. I do goofy drawings. So it was around this time that I started doing lots and lots of goofy drawings. In particular, I would try to do as many funny cartoons as I could. And I'd show them to my parents. My mom and dad were my first audience. If I could make my mom and dad laugh, that was just everything. So it was around this time that I also decided, like, you know what I want to do? I want to make a comic strip. I wanted to make a comic strip that's in a daily newspaper that comes out every single day. That's what I want to do with my life. I was all of like 11 years old, and I was already set on my goal, what I wanted to do. Now, I also had a huge love of comic books, meaning superhero comics. I just dug them. And I'm talking about comics like the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and Batman. I was a huge fan of superhero comics. And I just loved everything about them. I really loved the action. I really loved that there was always good guys and bad guys, the superheroes and the supervillains. And I loved how dramatic they were. Whereas comic strips were always about being funny, comic books were about, telling a story that can get really, really serious, even a little bit scary, a little bit tense. I think the key word that I just said, like, is dramatic. They could really tell a story in a way that felt meaningful. And you could do anything. When I was a kid, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, we didn't have movies like we had now where you could do pretty much anything with CGI, with computer graphics. When I was a kid, if you wanted to see something fantastic like this, you had to open up a comic book. It was the only way you're going to see this kind of story. And I just loved them. But I could not draw like this. No way. Still can't. I'm a goofy drawer. I'm a doodler. Now, jump ahead many years later. I have been very, very lucky. As small Judd became big Judd with a little less hair up top, because that happens. I have had the opportunity to tell stories in a variety of ways. I am a professional cartoonist, and it's been 20 years of doing cartooning and writing. I've done it all kinds of different ways. I did a comic strip finally that ran in newspapers for about 4 years. It was called Frumpy the Clown. I did an animated series for Cartoon Network. It was called Life and Times of Juniper Lee, and it was a blast. I wrote superhero comics for a long time. I did this X-Men comic called Exiles. I wrote Green Arrow for a while. I wrote Green Lantern for a while. And I even wrote this comic book that you might have heard of called Batman. John and I were talking about that at the top of the show here. Now, I tell you all that to tell you this. About, 8 years ago, my son, this is a picture of my son. My son came to me and he said, "Dad," and I said, "Yeah." He said, "Dad, can I read some of the superhero comics you wrote? Like, could I please maybe read, I don't know, your Batman comics that you wrote?" And I had to say, "Oh, my Batman comics. No, you may not read my Batman comics, because my Batman comics, well, they're kind of intense. They're really not made for like a 7-year-old, buddy. We should find a graphic novel or a comic book that's good for you." So he and I looked around, and the one that we found for him that we really felt fit was a series called Bone. Do you all know Bone? If you guys don't know the series Bone, you should check it out. Bone is phenomenal. So I got my son all 9 graphic novels of Bone, and he plowed right through them, and he loved them. Now,